Minister, whom we fondly call you KTR. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you on how much you have accomplished at a young age. Just looking at your Wikipedia, and I realized that I graduated and left India in 1973 when you were not born yet. So congratulations on getting so much done at a young age. Like you talked about, Telangana has achieved a lot in the last 8 years. Double the GDP, clean water, all these things. What were the core aspects of being able to achieve those fantastic results? And what do you think Telangana as a state needs to do to keep that trajectory going for the next 8?
Thank you, Desh. Great question. Firstly, like the MC said, with a name like Desh, I think you can only inspire confidence. What you've done in Hubli has today translated into something very meaningful here in Nizamabad. Firstly, I think Desh and his entire team of Hubli Sandbox really deserve a big round of applause. Please put your hands together. Thank you. And I'm sure Jayashree's role is more paramount in this, so thank you, Jayashree. I think for contributing in a big way to Desh and his brilliant story. Just to, kind of add to what I was saying before, Telangana meaningful and truly relevant to an emerging and a developing country like India. The reason why I said the dialogue needs to be centered around development and nothing else is because, as a country, I think we've lost the plot somewhere. We are not focused on ensuring that our children, our citizens get the basics right. We need electricity, we need drinking water, we need water to the fields of our farmers. We need to ensure basic support mechanisms are in place to make agriculture more remunerative, to ensure that the farmers' kith and kin and their children also look at farming as a productive sector and not otherwise. We have focused on these basics. What can be done? What further can be done? I think if you look around, the world and also India at large. I was at the World Economic Forum last week. One of the prominent themes that kept popping up over and over is, with the whole geopolitical situation and how, the world now realized that they're excessively dependent on China. The world has started taking stock of the situation and wants to move away, cautiously but slowly, away from China. There's the whole China plus one talk. There's the whole China for China and, rest being done elsewhere kind of a discussion. This is India's opportunity. This is an opportunity for India to seize the moment, to capitalize on it, to build more manufacturing, to ensure that we, also as we move into the services and knowledge economy, to latch on to that unique opportunity where India can position itself as a hybrid between China and the US. The reason why I call it a hybrid between China and the US is because China has done brilliantly to position itself as a factory of the world. They produce everything, literally. They produce active pharmaceutical ingredients. They produce world-class electronics. They produce plastic molds and little things that we see all around us. They also produce some of the most high-tech equipment that there is in the world that is used in aerospace, defense, space tech, etc., etc. Whereas the US, slowly but steadily, has moved away from being a manufacturing to a services, now more to a knowledge economy. And like I was pointing out, I think over the next 1 decade, India can truly position itself with progressive states like Telangana leading from the front. India can truly position itself as that unique combination which can both cater to the manufacturing needs of the world, also at the same time ensuring that this young think force that we have, that amazing demographic dividend that can pay off big time if we ensure that more and more sandboxes can come up in various parts of India. If we can focus and ensure that the youth of India doesn't unnecessarily get distracted from the development agenda and continues to stay on course, then magic can happen over the next 1 decade. The last thing I'll mention on this count, Desh, India does not have the luxury of leapfrogging anymore. We cannot allow leapfrogging to happen. We have to literally pole vault. Because what US was able to achieve in the last, say, 1 century or so, what China was able to achieve and accomplish in the last 2 decades or so, India has to do that in 1 decade. And that is the window of opportunity that India cannot miss out. and more such unique opportunities where ecosystem and multilateral, cooperation opportunities between the government, the private sector, the academia. If this kind of conversations can happen more often with tangible outcomes, with tangible metrics, then surely India will actually get onto that proper direction and proper dialogue.
No, totally agree with you. Also, I'm a big believer of democracy. It's very messy process, but it has an ability to include everybody and do the inclusive growth. In fact, I remember in 1980s and 90s, somehow there was a feeling that Japan had won and US was going to lose. And it's amazing what they did over the next 20 years. They just reinvented themselves. And similarly, they will. And the geopolitics offers a fantastic opportunity for India. And also, it's very heartening to see, for example, India really stand up and start making iPhone 15s, which is one of the most complex technologies. So the fact that they can master these things, I totally agree with you. How important do you think is the inclusive growth to be able to achieve the dream?
Desh, democracy is good. I completely agree with you. But demagoguery is not. Democracy is possibly our greatest asset, besides the think force that I just talked about. But demagoguery and, insulting our institutions, insulting our own people, dividing people in the name of religion, etc., can never make India, can never propel India into the first world orbit. What can aid, the inclusive growth opportunity that you just discussed, that you just mentioned? I firmly believe in three I's. Honourable Prime Minister had called all the political party representatives a couple of years back for a dialogue. I told him one thing on behalf of my party, the Bharat Rashtra Samiti. I told him, sir, the 3I mantra needs to be followed. First I is innovation, second I is infrastructure, and third I is inclusive growth. Unless you mix these 3 I's and come out with a very unique model, because if you think about it, young Indians today, with the kind of access they have, we are all drowning in information, but like they say, we are all, grasping for knowledge and grasping and clutching for wisdom, I guess. Young Indians today have the access to the information, have amazing ability to also solve the world's problems. And they have stars in their eyes. They have the ability to really come out and, aim big at the globe and, solving global issues. Provided we give them platforms to actually, provided we give them wings to their dreams. So in Telangana, we founded what is called as T-Hub, which is the world's largest technology incubator now. Not only did we find the T-Hub, not only did we set up the T-Hub, today Telangana is uniquely positioned with women entrepreneurship hubs called as a V-Hub. We also have created TSIC, the Telangana State Innovation Cell. In fact, Funny is here. He was our Chief Innovation Officer of the state of Telangana for a very long period. I'm thankful to him for that. And also, we have created a number of institutions, including a very important institution called as TASK, the Telangana Academy for Skills and Knowledge. Unless you have your youngsters gearing up for the opportunities the world is going to present to you, unless you are able to latch on to them, unless you're able to actually, leverage that opportunity, you'll not be able to do much. So innovation and the kind of platform government can create as an enabler is extremely important. Infrastructure is equally important. The fact that today you can travel from Hyderabad to Nizamabad in about 3 hours, and probably in days to come with high-speed rail connectivity in half an hour's time, is what is going to be a game changer. Then it doesn't matter where you live and where you work. You could be living in Bangalore and working in Hubli. You could be living in Nizamabad and working in Hyderabad. So the kind of infrastructure that India needs as a country is something that governments and private sector both have to focus on. Not only national highways, rapid rail connectivity, also ensuring digital infrastructure is in place so that it becomes a level playing field irrespective of which town and which village you reside in. The third and most important thing, if you ask me, India is a country which is full of diversity. Everything in India changes every 150 kilometers. The language, the dialect, the eating habits, the way you think, the cultures, etc., etc. India has 22 official languages, 300 unofficial languages. The language you speak at home versus the language I speak at home, while we are both brown skinned, are as different from each other as are possibly German and French. So this diversity of India needs to be respected. We all, as governments and as private entities as well, we all need to ensure that innovators, irrespective of what background they come from a rural area, it could be a woman or a man, it could be a youngster or an old guy, irrespective of who you are, what religion you belong to, or what social class you belong to, you need to be given opportunities that are equal and inclusive. With this 3I mantra, I sincerely believe India can propel itself into the first league, first world.
So, in the crowd here, we have a lot of well-meaning citizens, very excited young people from rural India. What can they do in their individual capacity to contribute to the growth and get India to achieve its deserved position globally?
I think all of us Indians, have been taught from a very early stage. When I was growing up as a young man in 80s and 90s, I used to see around me that, while we have this amazing problem-solving ability, we are always taught from a very early stage not to take much risk. We are told that you can be a job seeker, not a job creator. Entrepreneurship is something that has not been, promoted as a culture among Indian society. From a very early stage, Indian parents tell you, become a doctor or an engineer, get a job, settle in life, get married, have children, buy a house, buy a car, etc., etc. Not a single Indian parent would actually tell you, go out into the world, chase your dreams, follow your dreams, and be ambitious and actually take a risk. Unfortunately, debt in India is looked down upon, frowned upon. So this fundamental shift in attitudes that we ought to be risk-taking, we ought to think big, we ought to think global, and we are solving a problem. Remember that you're solving 1/5 of humanity's problem. So therefore, I think our ambition, our vision needs to expand a bit. Our risk-taking appetite needs to expand a bit more. And culturally and sociologically, Indians need to start thinking big and start experimenting. Remember, after all, it's one life with a very limited lifespan, with a very limited capacity. So therefore, we need to risk a bit more is what I would say. And youngsters here especially, I think in my time, in Desh's time when we were growing up, I think there wasn't much appetite of capital. And today's India, and today's world, capital is not a challenge anymore. You can raise capital if you have the right kind of idea. If you have the right kind of product, the markets are there to lap it up. So therefore, I think taking a bit more risk, thinking big, thinking global, not just thinking India, I think that's the way forward from an Indian youngster's perspective, if you ask me.
Well, I also want to thank you for personally finding ways to do it. I was in Basra yesterday and met these 10,000 students who are the cream of the crop. And this new initiative that Raju and Venkatraman have to really inject this entrepreneurial spirit in them is something that we really need to keep pushing, I think. Because when you ask them what would you want in the future, they all say government jobs. And so I think we have to make them a lot more ambitious, a lot more entrepreneurial to move the country forward. Now, we talked about how democracy is a good thing, but it has its own limitations. In fact, it's worse in US than in India, because in US, congressmen have to get elected every 2 years. So as soon as they get elected, the election starts again.
The re-election
starts. So what are the secrets to make sure that in democracy, the bureaucracy and the political engine can be productive?
Well, I wish there was a short answer. The one thing I would say is, if a leader, if the head of the state, in the case of Telangana, our Honourable Chief Minister, he's a man of great vision. He's a man who's also rooted in reality and grassroots. If the leader has the political will, I think then bureaucracy and every other system that is supposed to work with the government will fall in place. And a great example, like I said, is the execution of one of the largest projects in the world, the largest lift irrigation project in the world, being completed in 4 years in a democracy like India, with all the challenges that we have, is a classic example of how things can be done. But having said that, I think besides the political resolve, the political will, what matters also, sincerely, I'm saying this with utmost sincerity, I think politicians should stop worrying about winning their next election all the time. If we decide that it's okay to lose an election, if we decide that it's okay to actually sit out, maybe next 5 years, then we can get a lot of stuff done, honestly. Otherwise, you're always sucking up, you're always trying to win the next election, you're always trying to do what is more popular than what is right. So therefore, I think that fine balance that is missing is something that India needs to find. Unfortunately, it's easier said than done, but I think there will come a time when development will take center stage and not halals and hijabs and other nonsense. And then I think India will actually move forward in the right direction with the right kind of intent and with the right kind of goals.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, we have 5 more minutes with KTR. So if any of you have your questions that you want to ask him, please come forward and maybe we can ask them 1 or 2 questions. So please stand up and come here in the front so that we can bring a mic to you because we don't really have a lot of time. So KTR, one of the things that US seems to be doing pretty good is engaging the private citizens into the bureaucracy, more as experts, right? Because our bureaucracy comes from an administrative capability and not really a vertical capability. I know you're trying that with people like Funny and so on. How can we make more of that happen?
Great question, Desh. In fact, in Telangana, not only we have Funny, but in fact, my entire Department of Industry and Commerce and IT, Information Technology, has almost 15 different very bright young people from the industry who are working in various very, very senior positions. In fact, one of the gentlemen is working with us for the last 8 years, who is heading now our director as Director of Electronics and Semiconductors, is currently in the US. So what we've done in Telangana consciously is we've co-opted for the best of the talent that there is in the private sector. We have invited them to be a part of the government and use this lateral entry as an opportunity to ensure that we get the best expertise. And I think you rightly pointed out, bureaucracy in India is more of an administrative capability. And bureaucrats in India are using to sit in their ivory towers and with all the entrepreneurs coming to them and literally pleading with them, ki sir ye kar do. Unfortunately, unless we change that mindset a bit by pushing them more aggressively, by ensuring that they also get exposure to the private sector. In fact, if you ask me, I would send most of my bureaucrats into the private sector for a couple of years so that they understand what the other side of the table looks like. So therefore, I think a mix of both, sending our bureaucrats and bureaucracy into the private sector for a bit and also getting the private sector into government sector to co-opt them, I think is the right model. And way forward, I would imagine more and more positive outcomes with measurable goals, like how you do your performance appraisal. Yeah. Now that sort of a system also needs to be brought into government, and I think a combination of all this would really help. Yeah.
Oh, that would be fantastic.